Sylvia Perez-Cash, the Senior Vice President of Operations at HACER. In today's session, we'll learn new leadership practices that meet the needs of our new workplace environment, including remote team management, productive personal habits, and ways to support multidimensional workspaces. Before we get started, I would like to introduce Joe Ávila, today's moderator, to make remarks on behalf of our sponsor, Ford Motor Company. Thank you, Ford Motor Company, for your continued support of HACER, your dedication to Hispanic inclusion, and your participation today. Welcome, Joe.
Muy buenos días a todos. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being with us this morning. My name is Joe Ávila, and I'm manager of the Ford Motor Company Fund, the philanthropic arm of Ford Motor Company. It is my pleasure and honor to be here with all of you and to moderate the executive leadership habits in the post-pandemic workplace panel. First of all, congratulations to Sid Wilson, the HACER staff, and HACER's board for their leadership in advancing the interests of the Hispanic community. Ford Motor Company Fund has been supporting communities at a local level for more than 70 years. As the corporate foundation of Ford Motor Company, we help build a better world where every person is free to reach their full potential through the pursuit of their dreams. Our roots actually run very deep in the nonprofit community, with relationships built over decades and by investing in organizations and initiatives that promote understanding and support of multicultural populations. This philosophy has always been a key focus of our work. At the Ford Fund, we believe freedom of movement should not be reserved to those who can afford it, but available for all to pursue their own path. And we work every day to help keep the road to a better future and offer opportunities to open and the opportunities to reach the dream to everyone, their dreams to everyone. At Ford, we take pride in forming long-lasting partnerships, like the one with HACER. This is a great example. For close to 3 decades, we have been supporting HACER's efforts and helping open doors for Hispanic corporate professionals. This commitment to the advancement of Hispanics in the workforce guided us once again last year during a difficult year for many families, especially for Hispanic communities we were disproportionately affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Although we're now beginning to experience some sort of normality, last year was very challenging and we had to adapt our way of doing business. The COVID-19 pandemic challenged companies to reconfigure their operations while also offering opportunity to transformation and innovation to achieve meaningful solutions and this incredible challenge. As many of you know, Ford actually transformed its operations last year by designing and producing urgently needed medical equipment and supplies for healthcare workers, first responders, and patients fighting coronavirus in collaboration with 3M. We made a commitment to produce and donate 120 million US-made medical-grade face masks to at-risk communities across the country and fulfill that commitment in addition to 20,000 air filtration kits. Beyond being the right thing to do, we did because the company core values are rooted in putting people first and in upholding the truth, trust, and our brand by striving to the right thing in our communities. So this actually led me to the panel, right? During the pandemic, we have to adapt. We all have to really rethink the way we work. And I think this is a great opportunity for us. We have an amazing group of panelists, and I would like to introduce our special guest speakers. Here with us, we have Corey Anthony, Senior Vice President, Chief Diversity and Development Officer for AT&T. Corey has been AT&T's Chief Diversity Officer since May 2017. He's responsible for leveraging AT&T's diversity and inclusion strategy, programs, and partnerships to drive innovation and growth. He also oversees the company learning and development efforts, including leadership development programs, talent identification, and all learning under the AT&T University brand. Corey is a thought leader with a great commitment to people. Welcome, Corey. We also have with us Carolina Jannicelli, Managing Director at JPMorgan Chase. Carolina helps run JPMorgan Chase new community impact team, leading the implementation of local strategies for the firm's $30 billion path forward commitment to advance racial equity. In her role, she works across the firm's lines of businesses to integrate strategies, based on community input and needs, ensuring impact and progress toward the goal of reducing the racial wealth gap. She has been recognized on Alpha's list of 50 most powerful Latinas in business and has recently been named by Latino Leaders Magazine among the top 100 most influential Latinas in 2020. Bienvenida, Carolina. Our next guest is Dave Rodriguez, Executive Vice President and Global Chief Human Resources Officer at Marriott International. David assumed this role in 2006 and was appointed a corporate officer in 2000. And in 2004, to the Board of Directors Inclusion and Social Impact Committee, formerly known as Committee for Excellence, that focuses on advancing employee well-being and inclusion in the company. Dr. Rodriguez was inducted as a fellow of the National Academy of Human Resources in 2014. Welcome, David. And we also have Shannon Schuyler, U.S. Chief Purpose and Inclusion Officer for PwC. Shannon's work activates PwC's purpose to build trust in society and solve important problems and to create a fulfilling employee experience. Responsible for furthering diversity, inclusion, and equity across the firm's workforce, she connects purpose with belonging to create an environment in the firm that celebrates identity and intersectionally as a way to drive innovation and business value. Shannon has been featured in Fortune, Forbes, Wall Street Journal, Working Mother, Huffington Post, and more. She was named a 2019 World Changing Woman in Conscious Business by Conscious Company Media and was included in Fast Company list of the 100 most creative business in 2016. Welcome, Shannon. Well, so let's start the discussion. Is everybody ready for that? I will hope so.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, all the panelists, for being here. And I would like to start with a question for Corey. The COVID-19 crisis has created an imperative for companies to reconfigure their operations and an opportunity to transform them. So, Corey, what are some of the changes that you have seen in your role that have become an opportunity?
So, great question. First, before I even answer that, Joe, again, thank you for hosting this conversation, and to Sid and team for allowing us to have this conversation. Look, stating the obvious, the blindingly obvious, the pandemic introduced a lot of new dynamics for our business. And we also have to keep this in context, right? We were dealing with this dynamic as we were dealing with the aftermath of George Floyd and all of the social justice issues and reckoning that was happening at the same time. So that's a long way of saying, Joe, there was a tremendous amount of change that happened in a relatively really short time period. For us, I think one of the most impactful changes was, if you think about a lot of the work that we do with my DE&I hat on, a lot of that work requires interaction and a lot of listening to employees and that intimate interaction with employees. And that was stressed with the inability to be able to do that physically. And so we have to really quickly pivot to, how do we capture the essence of that work in a virtual environment? Now, the good news for us is we were already working towards that end, just because of the nature of our business. And we're in 63 different countries with, over 250,000 people. So we were already working along those lines. We just had to accelerate it. So we had to exercise a lot of new muscles in terms of the tools that we use to communicate. We had to go back and rethink our messaging, because now when you move away from a physical environment, you don't have the opportunity to be able to provide as much context around some of the messaging as you otherwise would have. So we just learned how to exercise some new muscles, and the outcome of it, or the net of it, was we were actually able to touch more employees in 2020 with our efforts around DE&I and our efforts around learning and talent development than we ever have, because we did way more virtual activity than we had done previously.
Thank you for the answer. I would like to move now to Carolina. Our personal and professional worlds have steadily blended, interrupted, and disrupted in the work from home environment, right? How have you learned to support your teams through that transition? How was it changed? How has it changed from your approach to management, team building, and performance evaluation to keep your team engaged?
The environment has completely changed. And, the first thing that I really focused on as a way of supporting my team was to really dial up the empathy and to recognize that the pandemic and the social justice issues that we have been very openly, and I would say, it was about time that we acknowledged, the structural racism that affects so many, combined with the pandemic, just really transformed the environment in and out of the office. So we as managers really did need and do need to continue to lean in, but to dial up the empathy that we would normally apply to each of our employees, to really have genuine curiosity about how this is affecting them, how it's affecting their families, how are they able to cope with, from the most practical things to, some really tough emotional issues that the pandemic and the past year and half have brought up. Also, as a manager, really doubling down on, providing my team air cover with their business and with their clients, reminding them that they're part of a team. And, everything about how we went about doing our business changed as well. What it takes to get something done, what it takes to serve clients. And so to just be there for them and to remind them that they don't have to go at it alone. That they can rely on me, the company, each other, just to go out of our way to reinforce that, I think has been critical to get us all through the pandemic. Also, to really get people talking. Like, talking is powerful. Talking changes perception. Talking deepens understanding of what's going on. Topic creates perspective that can be very helpful. And to your point, the personal and the professional became really one and the same. And so I sort of put myself out there and sort of shared very openly and made myself very vulnerable about how this, the pandemic and just the changes in our lives have affected me and how I was coping and I've been coping. And that, I think, created a safe space for the rest of my team to open up and share about, what has been and continues to be difficult for them. In terms of team building and remaining connected and creating a sense of connection despite the physical separation, although I will say, I am in Dallas, Texas. I'm normally based in New York. I'm in Texas today because we have a 2-day full in-person offsite. So it's interesting to see how quickly I think, we are pivoting to at least a lot of the ways we used to work together. But in terms of remaining connected as a team, never forgetting to have fun. I mean, we really explored the limitations and possibilities of Zoom by hosting birthday parties, trivia games. We figured out how to do like Family Feud and Jeopardy and just really remind each other that in addition to, holding each other accountable and, to do what we need to do, we certainly get to have fun together. And so that, I think, has been key to keep things more balanced. The other thing I'll say about team motivation and morale, and then I'll just share a couple things on performance. But, in terms of keeping our team spirit and energy elevated, there had never been a time, I think, in my entire career where reflecting upon the purpose and the mission of our jobs really mattered, because we really have had to dig really deep to keep going, to stay motivated, to stay innovative, to actually turn these challenges into opportunities. And reminding my team and engaging them in conversations about their sense of mission, their sense of purpose for why they wake up in the morning and why it matters and who it's helping. I think has been incredibly helpful. And I think it's very important to help, navigate the situation and again, turn those challenges into opportunities. On the performance management front, I'll just say, two key things. Number one, we really, as leaders, have to go out of our way to ensure that every single member of our teams have absolute clarity about what success looks like for them in the next, 12, 18, 24 months. The normal criteria, the past criteria that we might have used to prioritize or to make decisions changed in many ways. Sometimes it didn't, sometimes it did. But I think that to the degree that every member of our teams have absolute clarity about what their deliverable is, what is our shared expectation of what success looks like for them, to ensure that they are set up for success with the resources and the information that they need to deliver, I think has never been more important, because there's really less margin to improvise when, in this environment where we're not all, at the company in a shared space. And again, there's just so much that's new. So right. I think that has been key for performance management. And then finally, just a reminder that when it comes to these digital interactions, everybody's personality really plays either in favor of it or against it. So, for those introverts who might not be as active on Zoom speaking up, make a mental note of that, read the body language, and just make sure that you make space to follow up separately so that everybody gets the opportunity to get their voice heard and they're not penalized because they just happen not to, have an outgoing personality. So that was a lot, but these things have really been very helpful for me and my team.
Thank you, Carolina. And basically, we have learned to humanize the virtual environment. And I think that's a key element of what you described. Thank you for your thoughtful response. I would like to go next to Shannon. You may have read articles opinion that the pandemic initiated a massive shift in work-life balance within the corporate sector. Assuming for the moment this is true, what do you think will also change about the characterization of corporate leadership? Will there be new models of executive leadership?
Well, I think one of the things that we've realized is that this has fundamentally changed how we do business. And so whether organizations were already on their way or on their journey to be able to do things differently, this last year has forced us into having to really reflect on the organization and to see what changes do we need to make sure that we're agile, to make sure that we're resilient. I think with that will come the elevated role of the CEO, certainly to drive the business, but also to drive the business and make sure that they're doing so with empathy, with vulnerability, and making sure that we're looking at what are those types of things, especially that fall into the non-financial category, that really will impact going forward how we show up in society and the responsibility that we have. I think there's been a lot of talk over the last year around this whole notion, certainly of diversity, equity, and inclusion, but also around the topic of ESG. And so saying that organizations and CEOs as the lead need to focus on these areas that are of incredible value, especially to marginalized communities. And so whether it's looking at the environment and the role that companies play across industry, whether that's looking at the social investments and how we elevate society and build capacity in nonprofits or address diversity and inclusion. And then what is our responsibility to actually be transparent and to report on these things and really embed it into our governance structure. So I see an elevation of C-suite leaders coming into these roles in a fundamentally different way than they may have 2, 3, 5 years ago, where now we realize the value of a CEO in addition to really driving shareholder value and ensuring the positive momentum of the organization from a business standpoint. It's also from a social standpoint. And it's having an understanding that those leaders have no sideline. It used to be, I believe, years ago that companies and CEOs didn't have to comment. And we are now in an era that you're compelled to comment, whether that be by your employees, whether that be by your shareholders, stakeholders of all different types, customers or clients. But people want to know what you stand for. It doesn't mean that you have to agree to everything. It doesn't mean you have to comment on everything, but you have to talk about why you are or why you're not, because people are going to create their own narrative for you. And I think we're seeing this really robust need for senior leadership to understand the ability to storytell. And in order to build trust, it's letting people in. And it's building on what Carolina had said, the empathy that you really need to be able to show. The ability to let people in and to realize that these things are complex, but you're going to find a way to be able to support that, not only personally, but also professionally. So I think what we're seeing, and a lot of the articles have said, is this really new awakening for the C-suite and actually also for board members of what is the totality of their responsibility. And I think this last year has galvanized us in realizing that it's more than making money. Even though many already knew that, now they realize the elevated need to emotionally connect, because that does impact your brand. It impacts your value. It impacts your agility and resiliency, because we have to be all in this together. This is something, and back even to what Corey, you were saying, that this is something that's important, that we have to come together to make this work. We were doing these things in various different stages at different levels, but now is the time we have to move together faster, and we have to get to the next stage, because it only will take another day or a month for another crisis to happen. And how can we make sure that we're completely ready to be there when it does?
Thank you, Shannon. Definitely, brands that know how authentically connect or basically are sensitive about our society issues can better emotionally connect with consumers that drive brand trust. So thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next, definitely, David has been patiently waiting. David, this question, of course, is for you. Do hybrid workplaces need hybrid leaders? What are some of the main differences you observed between managing teams in an office versus online, basically?
Hi, Joe. It's great to join you and my fellow panelists. And that's a great question. I would say more generally, of course, there were a lot of trends and changes in place before, and what the pandemic did was accelerate them. For instance, certainly a movement by consumers to more personalized experiences versus collecting things. Expectations of the employer. In fact, the Marriott and Accenture participated in a study. We sponsored a study this summer during the pandemic, and it's interesting, almost 80% of employees expect that their employers are going to care about them more than just as a paycheck, but help them become a net better off. And, in a similar way, I think the expectations of leaders, is accelerating and changing, and it's going to be challenged by this more fluid and virtual workplace. So I think the answer to your question is yes. I think leaders are going to have to step up their game, and I think that has to do both with mindset shift and skills that I think are going to be more and more necessary. In terms of mindset, at Marriott, we have this conviction that the best path to lasting success, it goes through promoting employee well-being, human well-being, right? And if you take care of your employees, they're going to be inspired and motivated to take care of the business, take care of your customers. And I think that mindset is increasingly important for leaders to adopt, precisely for what I said. The expectations of employees coming out of the pandemic is they're going to expect that their employers care about them, more holistically, not just as a paycheck. I also think that this more virtual environment that we're coming into means that leaders have to, sometimes leaders get caught up in what I call show hours. How many hours do I actually see you in the workplace or FaceTime? And, in this more fluid virtual environment, becoming more skilled at how you manage for results and how you really focus on results becomes important. So those mindset shifts, I think, also mean that there's some higher order skills that I think leaders are going to need And I tend to think them very simply as 3 R's. One is this notion of results focus. You have to be better at contracting for what has to get done, timelines, the resources that are needed. You know, you have to create SMART goals. So having a results focus becomes even more important in this environment that's increasingly more virtual. You know, secondly, a manager has to be a better resource broker for their people, whether that's technology, human connections, making the connections out there for them, and just generally empowering. Managers have to be better at being a broker of resources for their people. And then I would say, thirdly, you know, leaders have to be better at being recognition makers. So we all know certainly performance is important. If you don't perform, you're probably not going to get ahead. You know, you're responsible for your personal brand and image, but you also need exposure. And I think that it's very important that leaders take up this notion that they need to be recognition makers, open up the doors to opportunity. Particularly important if you think about the Hispanic community, the Black community, you know, communities that are underrepresented. Leaders need to step up and make sure that, you know, not only are they facilitating performance, but they're opening up doors to opportunity, making sure that their people are getting more exposure. So yeah, in this more hybrid, this virtual environment we're going into, leaders are going to have to step up, you know, their skills to be able to attain the results that they need to get, but to also help their people be more successful over time.
Thank you, David. I love how you summarize and you call it resource brokers. The leaders and managers need to be a resource broker. I think that's definitely is key moving forward. I know we're getting close to Q&A, but I want to give another chance also to all of you to comment. And I don't want to assign this question to anybody specifically. Whoever feels that have some immediate insights, please jump in. But basically, what insights have you developed during the global pandemic on the pros and cons of working from home as they relate to inclusion and equity efforts and strategies in our corporations?
Well, Joe, let me start since I ended, because that last theme is really important. In this more virtual environment, it's going to be important that we focus on making sure, particularly people coming from underrepresented groups, that you know, they don't become invisible, right? We need to make sure that we're promoting exposure, you know, for our people and giving them, you know, opportunity to display what they can do and to you know, and to gain opportunity.
I think one of the things that I would say, Joe, is we have to really look, the mental health issues that have come out of this past year are incredibly important to reflect on. Individuals who many were sitting by themselves for the past over a year, or individuals sitting alongside people that they were caregivers for, or individuals that were sitting in rooms and places in their parents' home. The situation that individuals were going through, I think we're going to have to nurture people back. And we're going to have to find ways to meet them where they are and to give the tools necessary to build capacity back. And so you had individuals who, many of which were working 14, 17 hours a day because they were in a room with their desk and their computer, and they kept getting back on it. And now they're so strained at a time when we're going to keep going. Things are only getting harder. Things are not going to get easier. And how can we make sure that we take care of those individuals and where people are in their well-being, knowing that we need to continue on to make sure that people are resilient and to make sure that companies continue to drive and play a responsible role in society. And I think it's really important that we reflect on that, because much has been said, but I think it was said and then maybe people are moving on. And I've seen a lot of individuals certainly challenged by that. And the more companies can reflect and make sure there's not a stigma to it, I think will be incredibly important.
One thing I'll add is that working from home removed the sort of democratizational effect of everybody coming into the office, right? It put everyone on an equal playing field, regardless of your, you know, economic background, racial, ethnic, family, whatever happens outside the office sort of was kind of neutralized in a way when everyone was working together. I think as leaders, we can't be passive observers when we notice and become aware that some of these differences are disadvantaging certain members of our team. And whether it is mental health, and I think that was an excellent call out, Shannon, whether it's, tech enablement issues, whether it is just, for some people, they, were able to simply, pivot and just do what they were doing. Others, might have multiple family members that live in the house, and like just having the physical ability to find a quiet time with not a lot of distractions to take your Zoom calls or whatever becomes a challenge. So I think that as managers, we need to just proactively address that and continue to set people up for success. I think that, the work, the talent market is incredibly competitive. And I think that to retain our top talent, across, and our diverse top talent, we really do need to be proactive and literally, go out of our way to connect one-on-one with our people and make sure that our direct reports are doing the same with their direct reports, so on and so forth. Because there is an expectation, and I completely agree that we will care, that we will lean in, and that we will acknowledge, the human factor much more much more overtly, I should say, than we perhaps have in the past. So I think that there is a very direct impact on minority employees. That we have to be proactive about and not wait until somebody says something. Like, we need to go seek it out and have those conversations.
So Joe, I violent agreement with everything that has been said by the other panelists. Two things that I would add, and take this in the context of me wearing the diversity, equity, and inclusion hat as well as the chief learning officer hat. Two things that we're teaching. One, intentionality. Two, leaders have to fiercely manage their time. And what do I mean by those? Intentionality. When we were all in physically in the office together, it was much easier to have those types of interactions. The water cooler talk, to be able to grab Joe on the way out for lunch. All of that happened much more easily. Now in a virtual environment, you have to be intentional about that, right? You have to be purposeful about that, managing your time. And I know I'm not the only one who's experienced this, but as we made the move to a more virtual environment, the demands on our time and scheduling of our time just increased exponentially. And so to maintain and improve that effectiveness as a leader, you just have to fiercely manage your time and set those priorities. And then DE&I and how we interact with our teams and our teammates has to be prioritized, and you have to be intentional about allocating the time and the resources to doing it.
This is great, amazing insights, and I'm really glad that each one of you took the time to share some of your experience in this. I'm grabbing, a few key highlights, like, let's be sure some of those team members are not becoming invisible. Mental health, be sensitive about, everybody's dealing with that, right? Not necessarily probably the direct employee directly, but some family members. Be sensitive about, not only working remotely and the impact of that means that that person is wearing several hats, family, and we cannot be passive about, as observers about what we see, right? And of course, love, Corey, be intentional, if you, and with what Carolina was saying, we cannot be passive. If we notice something, let's set up a private one-on-one virtual discussion with that person and be sure that we're managing our priorities. So thank you. I think, we'd love to keep asking you questions, but the chat is very, very active. There is several questions from the audience, and we know actually it's time for Q&A. If not, Sylvia and Vanessa are going to start to call us out. So I'm going to read some of the questions from the audience, and if one or two of you are able, think they have a really response for this, feel free. So the first question I see in the chat is, what increased mental health services are you providing to your employees? Anybody?
There's a lot of different things that we're doing, and so we've really amplified the work around well-being, and to make sure that people are taking time, they're taking sabbaticals, they're taking flexibility, they're taking their vacation, they're having individuals check in on them. We've seen a significant increase in our employees taking advantage of our different products as well as different resources related to well-being, having a significant number of people to be able to have conversations as a counselor level, for people to be able to get through things, as well as really being able to help individual situations, because a lot of them stem from caregiving and other responsibilities that are really taxing in addition to the work. And so really looking at that, and I think even most importantly, is making sure as we're going through the year and as going through still the performance cycle, taking all those things into account. And so making sure that we were very reflective as we went through this year, and we really focused on everyone's performance, that a piece of that we need to take into consideration and need to understand and be empathetic to the different situations that people were in. So yes, we want to make sure that we're rewarding people appropriately, but we also want to make sure we're not penalizing people because of the situations that they were going through. And so we took a lot of real effort and real empathy to go through that, to make sure that we were rewarding everybody for what they did this year, and to be able to show up and really taking into account the various different situations that people had, especially related to mental health, and especially mental health in marginalized communities, to ensure that people are continuing on the same path that they had. Because I think a significant concern was, do you have some people who were able to succeed more so than others this year because of the commitments that they had? And we were really focused on a weekly basis of looking at parity across the board on how we staff our jobs, on how people are getting recognized, on how people are getting performance feedback, because we didn't want to leave anybody behind. And I think it was increasing that transparency in the data, increasing, making sure we were watching everyone to both support people from a mental health standpoint, but also to make sure they weren't derailed. And I think that is so incredibly important, especially in a year like this.
Implemented with a company called Mequilibrium. It allows our employees to take self-assessments, and we saw an explosion, as we've seen across industries, of mental health issues, stress, pre-antecedents to the clinical depression. And so this tool helped to identify those trends, and it also provided them tips and things that they can do in their day-to-day life to help cope better with stress, but more importantly, also connect them with other resources, whether it's our associate resource line or our medical providers, to be able to deal with some of these issues. And what we've seen is actually a gradual decrease in some of these indicators of stress and clinical depression. So again, empowering our associates with education and also tools so that they can take better control of their lives has been really important, because as you know, it's been particularly tough in the hospitality industry this last year and a half.
Definitely one of the industry most heavily impacted. And I'm actually glad that things are starting to open in several states and countries. I was staying in one of your hotels recently, and have a much needed vacation. One comment too.
Thank you for that, and for the 2-day offsite I heard also. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and Shannon, to your comment, that's extremely important. Giving additional flexibility to the employees. I remember one particular experience within Ford. We had all our plants shut down back in April of last year worldwide. And then our CEO called an emergency call, and everybody was, oh my God, there's going to be layoff. Something bad is really going to happen. It's a weird announcement. And the CEO said, hey, I just want each one of you to take care of yourselves, your family. Next week, everybody's on vacation. We are not working. Everybody shuts down. we're living a very difficult time right now. I'll see you back in 1 week. And there were people, oh no, I need to keep working. No. Everything is stopped. I mean, well, we're going to keep working. 8 oral plants are closed. So that was a very sensitive move. And I think it was very well received. But to your point, the more that we are sensitive as leaders to do that, the better.
Well, I have to build on that real quick. I think that's so important. When you think about COVID and looking at what our people were doing, very few people took vacation because they had no place to go. So you had people who normally would have 4 weeks of vacation and be able to have some reboot, some recharge, weren't taking anything. And so actually, we've just rolled out where we're paying people to take vacation. So for every week of vacation you take, we're paying you hundreds of dollars to take it, because we need people to take it, because they went a full year without doing it and they didn't have the chance to kind of find time to kind of shut down. And that's so incredible. And so it's inspiring that Ford did that. And I think other companies will continue to follow as we get people back in the rhythm of things, of being able to take time off. And again, I think we're going to have to probably find ways to reward them as we're getting them back used to doing that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to go with the next question on the chat, and I would like to give the opportunity to Curry and Carolina to answer this. How has working in a virtual environment impacted pipeline development for higher level positions? Who wants to start?
I can share some thoughts. And when you say pipeline development, you mean talent pipeline, like, mobility, or
I would think, yes, within the organization, the upcoming management or mid-level management.
Yeah. So it's kind of a tale of two cities, because the job market is very, very, very active right now. And I think people during the pandemic, whether you wanted it or not, reflected on their lives and their priorities and what mattered to them and what kind of life they want to have and their sense of purpose. And that has resulted in a lot of turnover, lots of, management changes, leadership changes, people doing something different. A lot of people retiring maybe a little sooner than they would have otherwise. So there is a lot happening, which represents opportunity for people that are up and coming to, have an interview for these roles and get some of these roles. So I think that the impact has been one, certainly of opportunity, because there's a lot of change going on right now, and that's great. I think secondly, it does present a challenge, because obviously, I don't think there's a single senior person in any company who has gotten there without the support of a sponsor, of somebody who goes to bat for you, somebody who throws your name in the hat and really opens doors and or also coaches you along the way. Could be two different people performing those roles, but in any event, I think that, again, as leaders, this is not the time to be passive. This is a time to proactively cultivate and nurture those people that we believe in our company or externally, and just stay in touch with them, letting people know about openings. And actually, I've actually spent a lot of time just checking in with talented people that I believe in, to just see where their head is. What do you want to do? Because that way, if I see something come across, I can immediately make an introduction. So that's one. I would say the other is directly to the people who are interested in continuing to grow. And I realize our audience is made up of senior people for the most part, but even at senior levels, there's the next level, right? And I think this is, again, not a time to be passive. It's a time to stay in touch. What Corey mentioned about being intentional applies here 100%, right? Who are those senior leaders? Who are those influencers that you have a relationship with that you haven't been in touch with for a while? I mean, this is happening all the time. People reaching out, hey, let's check in. I mean, again, we are different parts of the world and the country reopening. I mean, I've had lunches already. I've had coffees. And so I think we need to be proactive. But I would say the overarching message is there is a lot of opportunity because there is a lot of change, and the talent market is hot right now. There is more demand for talent than supply for talent. So this is an advantage.
So, Joe, I would answer from two
Thank you.
perspectives, right? I'd answer from two perspectives, the perspective of the employee and then the company. For the employee, we're emphasizing, I want them to view this as an opportunity, right? When you're in really large organizations, you always get this question of how do I differentiate myself? And so I'm saying to our leaders and the folks that are in that pipeline, here's your opportunity to differentiate yourself. How effective are you at communicating in this new environment? How concise can you be when you're making your points, right? How are you able to read the audience in a virtual environment versus in person, et cetera? So to the point, to the extent that you can really hone those skills, you're going to give yourself an advantage in that competition for that talent or that opportunity. From a company perspective, it's impacted us. It's impacted our talent acquisition strategy and our retention strategy, probably more so than anything. Retention strategy because of the issues that Carolina just pointed out, right? The competitiveness in the marketplace and this thinking, this mind shift of many of our employees about, hey, maybe now it's an opportunity for me to look outside as well. There's a lot of movement, right? I think we're going to have much more of a nomadic element in our talent development as we go forward than we have in the past. So the retention work has to change. The talent acquisition strategy has to change because, again, part of that dynamic that I just talked about. And then two, and we put this in the context of all of the work that we're doing around DE&I, we have to double down to ensure that we're bringing a really diverse, talented group of leaders to put into these pipelines that we can develop for more senior roles in our company. And so we are super, super focused on that and driving that focus across our business. And so I see it, Joe, I get excited about it. Like I really get excited about it. I don't even see this as a con. This to me is an accelerator for our company. And it's forcing us to move much more quicker and to be much more effective. And it's actually fun. It's fun. It's a fun challenge to have inside of the business.
Yeah, and that's a great approach. Thank you. We're getting close to ending this session, but I think there's an opportunity for a quick answer from each one of you on a general question that I think all our companies are definitely working on. It's about the disparate impact of working from home on women, especially women of color. And this question and from the audience basically saying, hey, this has been very well documented. 2/3 of all jobs lost or let go were held by women. How are you thinking, or your corporation approaching reintegration policies, strategies, plans to support women as they re-enter the workforce, especially virtually with everything they have to do at home?
I can share some of the things that we're doing and then some of the things that I'm doing on my team. Our company has expanded childcare benefits to help facilitate that transition. And there are other, benefits essentially in recognition of the particular challenges of childcare that many women face that we've ramped up. So I think that's one. I think the other challenge really goes back to having very personalized and very honest conversations about every person's situation. The power of feeling heard, the power of empathy, of sitting with a manager that with genuine curiosity and an open mind and a desire to make it work is incredibly powerful and motivating for all employees, women included. I think that we have to use common sense more than ever. And look, my company and our CEO, Jamie, has been extremely vocal about his views about physical return to office. And as of July 6th, actually, every employee at the company is required to come back 50% of the time. And so we will be transitioning into whatever the new normal is beginning formally on July 16th. Although the offices have been open for a while. But the key there is to find the middle ground. We want people to love working at JPMorgan. We value our talent. We appreciate our talent. And there are so many tools and so many options we can use to, person by person, figure out what are the biggest pain points, right? Like prioritize what matters more. Is it, the time when you come in or leave, et cetera? Like really get specific with curiosity. And I believe in my experience, that really, really makes the difference. I think many times when I've spoken to women who have left the workforce, there's just this general sense of just feeling disenfranchised, not heard, and they just don't see a path forward. They just can't imagine how it's going to work. And I think that a conversation can actually change that perception.
Thank you. Anybody else? We have about 3 minutes before we get to closing comments.
Yeah, Joe, if we have one more moment, I think, what just said is so terribly important. And I think it brings up a really, probably the question of the day for companies. Are you going to be a despite company or a because company? A despite company is a company where, say, a mom says, I work here despite the fact I am compromising too much on my personal life and the quality time I want with my children. That's a company that's going to suffer a great deal. She just heard we're on the verge of incredible movement, burnt out employees leaving industries and companies and switching. Are you going to be a despite company or are you going to be a because company? In other words, that same person saying, I work here because not only can I be successful, have a great career, but I can also have a great personal life. I can raise my children in a way that makes sense. And that's just not for me, that's for parents in general, but for anybody, right? I think today, the word was used, you have to be proactive. I think companies today have to have a different mindset. This is not about people feeling fortunate to have a job at your company. This is people choosing to have you in their life as an employer because you're adding value to their life. And, our belief in Marriott is if we add value to people's lives as employees, they'll be inspired. They'll adopt the company as part of their family. They'll be inspired to make the company successful. And I think it's going to be critical for companies as we move forward to have that type of mindset as they run their companies.
Yeah, for us, Joe, we said, hey, we have to be extremely surgical when we talked about this notion of women of color, especially in the challenges. So we actually put structure around it. We put learning resources around it, and we created a program we actually call our Women of Color program, where we take leaders through this program. And the element of this program that's incredibly impactful is it's not just the women that go through this learning experience and deal with issues that are unique to them. We also mandate that the supervisors have to go through this because we realized very quickly that a lot of our leaders in the business just didn't still have the right level of knowledge and sensitivity around the issues and the uniqueness of that experience if you are a woman of color in our business or in corporate America in general. And so we have the participant and the supervisor go through this experience side by side, and it's transformational in terms of how the interaction is happening in our business.
Well, I think building on that, and as well as other people said, we've really been focused on it around allyship. So this is about individual conversations. This is individual things that people are going through. And so I think we're all these great companies and we've created benefits and programs and things that get at the masses. But I think that surgical going in and saying, what does each individual actually need? And to know that they have an ally there, whether that's somebody who's the sponsor, who's going alongside, as Corey said, whether that's the individual who works next to you, but saying we need to come together and we need to have our white men who are incredible allies of our Black women and our women of color. We need to make sure that we're working alongside one another and coming together to support and to figure out individually what we need, because if we're going to create that sense of belonging, it takes each of us to do it, not just a program generally to get us there, but what within the program, what is that caring, what is that empathy, what's about trying to walk in somebody else's shoes. So for the long term, you're there and you're not just there as a passive bystander, but you're really there as an upstander and someone who's going to make a difference in the life of that person at work. And hopefully that will translate to their home life as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you, David, Corey, Shannon, and Carolina. This has been a great conversation. I feel like we could be here for another hour if we will be allowed, but I know that you are also very busy and the agenda needs to continue not only for you personally, but the entire ASER programming. It was definitely a great conversation, very insightful. I hope everybody in the audience was able to learn something new and also take something from the conversation. Having a deep understanding of how corporations adapted to the new challenge of the COVID-19 pandemic, it was definitely, very insightful. I want to be sure that everybody joins ASER next session, next virtual event, Building a Lasting Legacy. But I want to share this, this has been so good that inspired me. I'm going to jump in my Ford Mustang. I'm going to make a phone call with my AT&T phone. I'm going to call Shannon so she can give me some coaching advice from PwC. And I'm going to go to Marriott Hotel to meet with David using a JPMorgan Chase card. So with that note, basically what I'm saying, remember to support all the brands that support our community. So thank you. Don't miss out. Muchas gracias. Back to you, Sylvia. This was a great session. I'm very, very impressed.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you so much. I agree. It was a wonderful session. Thank you for moderating this conversation. And thank you to all of our panelists, Carolina, Corey, Shannon, and David, for your insights. This is a moment of change that we share as a community, as a country, as a globe, and it's all the change that you recognize is also opportunity. So I really appreciate you highlighting that.